Among the most influential guitarists of the 20th century, Robert Fripp stands out. But he was perfectly normal. No untamed mane, no dark shades, no love scandals, and no need to cater to the masses. Getting attention was not his goal. He became an idol despite his reluctance to accept attention or praise. Fripp embodies the essence of progressive rock pioneers King Crimson, whose albums unveiled new sonic realms with each release. They were revolutionary for their time, shattering every rule, and suddenly they vanished from sight. King Crimson, in contrast to its more commercially successful contemporaries like Pink Floyd and Genesis, remained shrouded in mystery, constantly evolving, and unnoticed by the general public. Why was it that this reticent, introverted man, who didn't market himself or try to win over his audience, became known as the creative force behind a whole musical subgenre? What was it about Fripp that drew the attention of musical heavyweights like Peter Gabriel, Brian Eno, and David Bowie? Robert Fripp never intended for his fame to last. His purpose in life was to unearth previously unheard noises. Earlier years, Robert Fripp came into this world on May 16, 1946, in the sleepy English village of Vimborne-Minster. His dad, Arthur Fripp, was a reliable grocer who held fast to working-class values. Edith, who was his mother, was practical and hard-nosed. She would never admit vulnerability, not even in her own son. There was only work, duty, and quiet. The household had no musicians, no philosophical books, and no music room. Fripp displayed symptoms of disconnection from the world around him at a young age. At the tender age of 4, he picked up the game of reading. By the time he was 6 years old, he was a master chess player, and he frequently spent hours alone thinking about things that other kids his age did not even think of. Regarding topics such as the definition of time and the necessity of human isolation. Even though he wasn't disruptive or outspoken, young Robert struggled socially and didn't fit in at school. His instructors said he was too intelligent to instruct, but too reserved to discipline. When he was 11 years old, he stumbled upon his sister's guitar, a beat-up, long-forgotten instrument, and felt like he had finally found a method to get his ideas known. Fripp didn't yet know it was art. It was just a means of existing apart from the need for verbal explanations. Neither Fripp nor any of his pals participated in athletic activities during his adolescence. Rather, he read Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, and, later, G. and spent hours every day practicing guitar in his own unique way. A. Gurdjieff, philosophers of being and will-worthiness. It was peculiar even in his guitar playing. Instead of wanting to perform, Fripp wanted to find out how music could represent intangible ideas like space, identity, and so on. He had no desire to become famous. His family had no problem with his decision to become an accountant when he was 15 years old, as he stated in an interview given many years later. However, he eventually stopped doing it, not because he was bored, because he was unable to function in the world without hearing. His parents, who thought art was for wimps, were shocked by his decision. Fripp instituted rigorous regimens for himself during this time, setting specific times each day to meditate, write in-depth journal entries, study, and practice. Tobacco, alcohol, and social events were all taboo for him. Even into his late 80s, he stuck to his routine of rising early every morning to meditate quietly. I have no intention of becoming a guitarist. I am an individual who is in quest of music. Fripp once informed his students in a master class that the guitar is only a tool. Tragedies did not overshadow Robert Fripp's formative years. However, a new way of thinking and a peaceful seclusion lay beneath the surface. An ongoing internal struggle between the desire to delve into one's own thoughts and feelings and the pressures of conforming to societal expectations. Silence was Fripp's currency in a world where volume was king, and he used it to craft music that was uniquely his. In his early career, Robert Fripp did not pursue the conventional route of a working musician after turning 20. He studied musical structure, practiced using his own approach, and read philosophy as much as he practiced his fingers, rather than going into cover bands or playing bar gigs to make ends meet. He stood out in the London music scene of the 1960s as an unusual character, too serious, too quiet, and unconcerned with what the masses thought. In 1967, Fripp became a member of the strange band Giles, and Fripp, which was formed by brothers Michael and Peter Giles. The trio blended pop jazz with classical music. Fripp initially began exploring the idea of music as a living structure, not just something to be heard, but something to be intuited and cognitively felt. In this group, albeit they didn't achieve financial success. From there, he and a number of other people established King Crimson in 1968, in the capacity of a collective artistic declaration rather than that of a conventional band. Despite his lack of vocal talent and public speaking skills, Fripp had complete creative control over the band's sound, arrangements, stage philosophy, and even album artwork. He thought of the band as an organism that was always changing, with music moving forward at a breakneck pace, defying fads. Their self-titled debut album was released in October 1969. This brought about an instantaneous feeling. Mellotron passages straight out of a science fiction nightmare, ritualistic melodies, and vicious, growling guitar lines were all part of it. Rock had never dared to attempt anything like it before. According to Rolling Stone, it was an incredible perceptual explosion. It is the first genuine classic of progressive rock, as Pete Townshend of The Who proclaimed. That triumph, though, was not Fripp's final goal. Tensions among the group flared up again a few months later. Greg Lake and Ian MacDonald departed in succession. Working with Fripp, who insisted on pinpoint accuracy and would have none of it, was too much for most people. He was unconcerned, though. According to Fripp, there were no official members of King Crimson. Ultimately, only the music was destined to last. I didn't get into music to keep it going. I formed a band to discover what no one had heard before, Fripp once said. Over the next 5 years, he kept rotating the lineup and released albums like Lark's Tongues and Aspic, Starless and Bible Black, and Red, each radically different, extreme, and ahead of its time. Fripp wasn't seeking stability. He was pursuing something bigger, a kind of music capable of altering consciousness, both sacred and chaotic, and this was only the beginning. Career success at a time when progressive rock bands were reaching their commercial peak in the early 1970s, Robert Fripp quietly took a different path. To him, success wasn't about how many records were sold or how large the audience was. It was about how deeply music could reach into human consciousness. After King Crimson released 3 consecutive albums in 1973 to 1974, Lark's Tongues and Aspic, Starless and Bible Black Red, Fripp abruptly announced the band's dissolution. The reason? He felt that music was turning into a product rather than an experience. We were no longer creating rituals. We were selling tickets, he said. While fans were bewildered and critics lamented the decision, Fripp withdrew from the stage and went into retreat. During this period, he studied under J.G. Bennett, a British mystic who taught Gurdjieff's philosophy. Fripp participated in meditation courses, performed manual labor, and lived like a monk. He saw this as a process of cleansing the artist's mind so he could return to music untainted by ego. And when he returned, Fripp didn't reform King Crimson. Instead, he dove into a series of boundary-breaking projects, defying every convention. In 1977, he played on David Bowie's Heroes album. Was Fripp's haunting, distorted, long-sustained guitar work, sounding as if it echoed from another dimension, that gave the title track its surreal character. Bowie saw Fripp not just as a musician, but as a summoner of sound from beyond reality. That same year, he collaborated with Brian Eno, releasing No Pussyfooting and later Evening Star, pioneering ambient albums that used tape loop techniques Fripp dubbed Frippertronics. There were no clear melodies, no rhythms, only evolving layers of sound opening into a purely meditative sonic space. Fripp also appeared on Peter Gabriel's debut solo album, collaborated with Daryl Hall, Blondie, Talking Heads, and taught in his own workshops, where he passed on the idea of music as a spiritual path. In 1981, he revived King Crimson, but in an entirely new form. New lineup, new sound, new philosophy. The album Discipline marked a turning point, blending post-punk, minimalism, and meditative thought. While many old bands stagnated with recycled formulas, Fripp stayed a step ahead, never repeating himself. I don't want to become the past of myself. I want the music to still be happening, not remembered, said Fripp. At every stage, he dismantled what he had built, not out of disdain, but because he refused stagnation. For Fripp, music wasn't a career, it was a ritual journey, sacred, transformative, and unending. Disputes, conflicts, and upheavals. Robert Fripp wasn't just an unpredictable artist, he was an extremely difficult person to work with. To Fripp, music was a sacred ritual, and anyone who failed to treat it with absolute seriousness was considered on a different plane of consciousness. Over more than 5 decades, King Crimson went through lineup changes almost with every album. Fripp never tried to keep the band stable, believing that stability led to stagnation. But this philosophy also sparked countless conflicts. Legendary drummer Bill Bruford once shared, "Fripp is a creative genius, but he demands total control, from every drum beat to how you stand on stage." Many musicians left Crimson in frustration, not because of the music, but because they couldn't endure the psychological pressure of working with him. Even longtime collaborators like Adrian Belew weren't immune to conflict. In 2013, Fripp announced his retirement from the music industry, citing a loss of faith in the mutual respect between artist and system. not long after he reformed King Crimson, without inviting Bowie back, causing controversy among fans. Fripp offered no explanation, stating only, "Emotion is not the measure of artistic decisions." But Fripp didn't only clash with fellow musicians. He waged a long and bitter battle with the record industry. For years, labels like EG Records were accused by him of exploiting King Crimson's copyrights and re-releasing recordings without his consent. Fripp sued, wrote open letters, and publicly condemned the music industry as structurally exploitative and ethically bankrupt. In the mid-1990s, he founded Discipline Global Mobile, DGM, his own record label, built on principles of transparency, fair profit sharing, and respect for creative rights. DGM became a reference model for many independent artists to follow. Another upheaval came from his public image. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Fripp unexpectedly appeared in a YouTube video series called Sunday Lunch, playing guitar while his wife, singer Toyah Willcox, dressed outrageously, danced, and sang rock classics. Many were stunned. Was this the same stoic Robert Fripp? The public was divided. Some claimed he was destroying the legendary image. Others saw, perhaps for the first time, that Fripp was genuinely having fun. Fripp's response was brief. If an artist can't laugh at himself, then he's worshiping his ego, not the music. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. Because more than anyone, Robert Fripp understood this truth. The price of absolute freedom is being misunderstood your whole life. Personal life, offstage, Robert Fripp did not live like a rock legend. No parties, no mobs of fans, not even a TV in the living room. He lived like a modern-day hermit, waking at 6 a.m., practicing guitar in silence, meditating, reading philosophy, and recording every thought in fountain pen into worn leather-bound notebooks. But his personal life was not entirely solitary. In 1986, Fripp married singer-actress Toyah Willcox, a rebellious punk icon of 1980s Britain. It was a marriage no one saw coming. He, stoic, introspective, disciplined; she, fiery, free-spirited, unafraid to wear bright red lipstick and belled out. Want to be free, in the middle of a crowded street. They lived together in an old house in Worcestershire. Secluded, timeless, filled with books, instruments, and sunlight. No children, no scandals, no display. For over 3 decades, they've kept their life private. No music industry galas, no stepping into the celebrity circus. But within that quiet world, they shared one vital thing: absolute respect for individual freedom. Fripp once said, "Toyah doesn't need me to fully understand her. She needs me to allow her to be herself, and vice versa." While he immersed himself in experimental music projects, she acted in theater, appeared on television, wrote books, and painted. They didn't do everything together in the usual sense, but they were each other's safe place to return to. In 2020, as COVID-19 spread and the UK went into lockdown, Toyah had a quirky idea: film YouTube videos of the two of them performing rock songs in their kitchen. Fripp initially refused, but then agreed. Not for the music, but for her. And so the Sunday Lunch video series was born, featuring a sharply dressed stoic Fripp playing Metallica riffs on guitar while his wife danced wildly, dressed up in absurd costumes and shouted cheeky lyrics. The videos went viral, viewers laughed and scratched their heads. Was this really the cold, distant Fripp from King Crimson? He didn't care. This was how he expressed love, not through words, not in grand romantic gestures, but by giving the one he loved the freedom to live fully in her own way. Robert Fripp's personal life wasn't a gentle ballad. It was a counterpoint between stillness and motion, between meditation and rebellion, between philosophical silence and bursts of laughter echoing from the kitchen, and perhaps only in that life his music finally rests in peace. Legacy and influence: Robert Fripp never set out to become a legend, but by refusing to be an icon, he became the icon of refusal itself. In a music world where success is often measured by charts and follower counts, Fripp left behind a different legacy: radical creative independence and a musical philosophy no other artist has managed to replicate. Fripp's first and greatest impact was on progressive rock. King Crimson wasn't just a pioneering band in the genre. It was a continuous laboratory where rock, jazz, classical, ambient, noise, and even meditation collided, experimented, and transformed. Every album was its own universe, never repeated. Without King Crimson, there might not be Tool, Dream Theater, Porcupine Tree, or even Radiohead. Steven Wilson, leader of Porcupine Tree, once said, "King Crimson is the unfinished map of progressive rock, and Fripp is the one who drew every line with his own hands." But Fripp's influence extended beyond sound. He left behind an ideology, where the artist isn't someone who pleases the market, but one who searches for truth through every note. Through his label Discipline Global Mobile, DGM, he championed transparency in earnings, defended artists' rights, and opposed the exploitation of creative intelligence for profit. In numerous writings and lectures, he emphasized, music is a moral act. If it's not honest, it dies before it's ever heard. His guitar craft school, founded in 1985, was another major legacy. It didn't just teach technique. It was a spiritual journey where students were trained in posture, breathing, silence, and how to listen to sound as a living being. Many renowned artists attended and later called it a meditation school through sound. Fripp also helped pave the way for modern ambient music, especially through his albums with Brian Eno, like No Pussyfooting and Evening Star. His Frippertronics technique, using tape loops to layer sound, would later influence everyone from Aphex Twin to Nine Inch Nails. And yet, perhaps Fripp's greatest legacy doesn't lie in any recording. It lies in the idea that an artist can live outside every system simply by staying true to their path. No media campaigns, no shouting for attention, just a guitar, an independent mind, and the courage to say no. A single honest note can outlast a fake career that spans 40 years, Fripp once wrote. And maybe, precisely because he never tried to become anyone else, Robert Fripp became himself. A singular, irreplaceable figure in the history of modern music. Present life. Robert Fripp will turn 79 in 2025. But unlike the image of an aging artist quietly living in nostalgia, he still wakes up at 6 a.m. every day, practices guitar, meditates, and records his thoughts in a leather-bound notebook kept by his bedside. To Fripp, age isn't an end point. It's just another stage in the creative journey. He and his wife, Toyah Willcox, still live in their old house in Worcestershire, where the stone walls are covered in moss, and the only sound each morning is the gentle hum of guitar strings. They don't throw parties, they don't entertain strangers, but they work every day as if still in their prime. After announcing his withdrawal from the music industry in 2012, Fripp was thought to have retired. But then he returned, stronger than ever. In 2013, he reformed King Crimson with a new lineup, not to follow the times,